fierce opposition, the government here is forging ahead and hoping to pass the new laws by Passover next month. Now to Israel's current central bank governor, who tells me that the independence of the judiciary is imperative and essential. I spoke to Governor Amir Yaron because, of course, if judicial independence is up for grabs, then of course I wanted to know whether central bank independence would also be up for grabs. The governor has been critical of the reforms and he hasn't changed his views.
Right now, the changes in the judicial reform could weaken some of this independence. Moreover, the process itself is a hasty one, and that does not have a wide agreement in the public.
Do you fear, and of course on this program tonight we will hear investors in the tech industry, which is a huge part of the economy here, basically saying, we will withdraw, we will disinvest?
We have seen some high-tech leaders and industry leaders telling us that maybe investment first won't come in, and some of them are even talking that they might take their business elsewhere. In the long run, the implication might be basically brain drain, etc. And this is why this needs to be handled with care. This has huge implications, and this is why, again, it's imperative that we maintain the strength and independence of this institution, and this is done in a way that has a wide acceptance in the public, and it's a transparent process.
You keep talking about the institutional aspect and the independence of the institutional aspect. That suggests to someone like me, you're basically worried you're next. So do you fear that your independence could be under threat?
I cannot be clearer than this. The independence of the governor, the independence of the central bank are critical to the economy. Any country that has tinkered, let alone weakened, the independence of the central bank has suffered dire economic consequences. I believe all our leaders and decision makers ultimately understands this and therefore would not come close to touching the independence of the bank.
You understand it or you hope it?
Richard, the proof in the pudding is the Prime Minister himself and also the Finance Minister immediately when these issues came up stated very clearly that only the governor decides on the interest rates and the central bank independence is central bank independence.
Let's talk about the economy. It's robust, it's good, you're raising rates. Have you revised your terminal rate?
Israel has had a great economic performance in the last couple of years. We've grown 8.6% in 21 and 6.5% in 2022, and we're on our way to 3% during 2023, and the hope is to go back to 3.5% in 2024. I should give the government lots of credit. It just passed a budget that was moderate, was not expansionary. Moreover, public wages were done in a way that was also modest and not expansionary. I think what we are seeing everywhere is the stickiness of inflation, that is especially in services. So we are determined, absolutely determined to bring inflation back down to its target. And if that means continuing raising rates, and that is our primary tool, that's what we will do.
The reality of what you have just said and the stickiness of inflation, are you surprised that central bankers don't really understand why they're not seeing more of a response?
I think all central banks, or many central banks, are facing this stickiness. It partly goes back to the exit of COVID, to the fact that there were vast fiscal stimulus. In Israel, it wasn't as big as in the US, but we have a thriving economy, partly because of what I said in the high-tech sector, that allows for more consumption and for more people's spending. We're also seeing some shifts in the labor market, and that means that it will take a little bit more pain, probably, in order to bring inflation back down to its target.
But at what point do you decide, well, we're close enough to the target, we'll pivot? Is pivoting dangerous?
I think pivoting is dangerous. We know, and there's experience in the past, that if you stop too early, inflation can come back with a vengeance. And therefore, I predict that, at least around the world, we will see rates continue to go up, and they will stay up for quite a bit longer.
Is this the most difficult of economic scenarios?
Our job is difficult. It is to manage the economy. The job to take inflation down today, it involves pain. And in Israel, it involves direct pain because many of the mortgages are tied down directly to the central bank interest rate.
You've got a lot on your plate, haven't you? I mean, you really have. It's not easy. What do you do to switch off?
On a personal...
Yeah. Do you switch off?
First of all, this is a 24/7 job.
Right.
Richard, just if you look at my term so far, I had 5 elections for prime ministers, for finance minister, pandemia. We had a mini war here. Of course, Ukraine, Russia, inflation. So the plate is full. Basically, people know I love to run on the beach, and I invite everyone abroad to come and see the beautiful beaches in Israel.
With me is Hadass Gold, who is our correspondent in Israel. Hadass, when I listen to the governor, and I also think about the other issues, for example, the settlements, the violence over that, the expansion of the Jewish settlements, the dozens of people who have been killed, one gets this feeling of a country almost falling apart.
It is incredible to think of all the massive fronts that this country is already facing, not only on the internal domestic issues, but then, of course, with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that's been rearing its head, really, I think in any other time period. What's been happening in the West Bank, what's been happening with this deadly violence would be the top story. But then at the same time, you have what's happening on the streets, these massive protests, and also what's happening in the international arena. Keep in mind, Benjamin Netanyahu has not been invited to the U.S. or the UAE just yet.
And Saudi and Iran, of course, which complicates it even more.
Exactly. And I mean, and I think that goes to show you the sensitive balancing act that Benjamin Netanyahu needs to have right now, because not only is he facing these international fronts, but domestically, he needs to keep these right-wing blocs as part of his coalition. Otherwise, he's not in power.
Okay, but the question, or the comment I hear most often, is that the tail's wagging the dog. That Benjamin Netanyahu said, I will control the coalition, but actually the coalition is controlling him.
And I think a big test, and maybe the true test, will be what's going to happen next week with Ramadan coming, with Passover coming. There's a lot of concern about security issues, specifically in Jerusalem. And I think a lot of eyes will be on Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Minister of National Security. Will he be doing anything that would potentially make the situation worse? And will Benjamin Netanyahu be able to control him?